Günaydın Türkiye. Günaydın kardeşler. Friends and neighbors. It's been an honor being here, and I would like to thank the university and the organizing committee for inviting us here. I just remember after hearing so many times hoş geldiniz that I have to respond hoş bulduk. So few words that I know in Turkish language, of course. Now I'm planning to talk not exactly about this. So it's about the spectrum of teaching styles, of course. Okay, I made a trick. The title is below. Okay, and it's a theory that is spread all over the world, more than 110 countries so far. One of these countries, of course, is Turkey. So perhaps many of you are familiar with this. And I would like to see, let's say, raise your hand if you know something about the spectrum here. Okay, so there are a few. In my presentation, I cannot cover everything, but I will try to share my experience for about 30 years teaching the spectrum and teaching with the spectrum. Okay, so like Fatih said, I'm the president of non-profit organization, and we have the rights for the official book for the spectrum of teaching styles. It is available for you free to download in this website if you want. And very soon it will be also available free to download in Turkish language. There is a colleague of ours that is working nowadays. We have a variety of initiatives, like we organize workshops on the spectrum with experts from all over the world. And also we have developed a variety of grants in order to promote spectrum-related research, not just for faculty members, but also for master students and doctoral students, so you can have this information in that website. I like traveling a lot, and I have been teaching about the spectrum in many countries around the world. So this is Abu Dhabi, Italy, Saloniki, and other places. There are, in Greek languages, at least 3 different or 4 different books, but I will explain what is this. This is the official translation of the book from Moston and Ashworth. And this is a book of mine. It's a monography that I have produced in order not to explain what is the spectrum, but how we can teach the spectrum to our university students or to our teachers. So this is part of the experience that I will try to share with you in this lecture. So I would like to ask, and please have a brief response. What do you think about this? Is teaching something simple? Higher. Okay, just to put it simple. Okay, so, but still, there might be people that they may believe that this is something simple. All you have to do, you just tell the students, and the students will do it. And we know that this is not exactly true. Okay, so teaching is not so simple, but many times in our job there are stereotypes. Some stereotypes there might be helpful, and some others there may be blocking our experience and our learning, our progress. So I will be discussing some of these stereotypes here because it's important. In education, we have to deal almost all of the time with abstract ideas and concepts. So we can describe what is a table, what is a chair. It's easy to touch it. We understand what is a chair or a table. But in education, we have usually to deal with abstract ideas, and it's very easy to create confusion about many concepts. So for many years, for example, in didactics. The main purpose of the research was focusing on finding which is the best method of teaching, so as to tell the teachers, you go and teach with this method. It took us many, many years to understand, many decades, I would say, of, let's say, evolution, to understand that we need more a spectrum of different teaching approaches, because students that they might have the same characteristics may learn with very different ways, may learn with very different pace, and they react so differently in the same methods or content. And you as a PE teacher, you know it better from your experience. So as a teacher or as a coach, you may have been advised so far of, what is the best thing to do. Try to enhance intrinsic motivation, try to increase responsibility, be democratic, be that way or the other way, or do this or do that. The problem of a PE teacher is how. How can I do this? How can I implement all these abstract ideas? Because I'm an academic and I can live in my mind and with my thoughts, but the PE teachers have to deal with real problems. So we have to provide a framework that is helpful for them. And the spectrum of teaching styles is that kind of framework. So what exactly is this theory? It's a unified theory about teaching and learning behavior. It all starts with an axiom, such as we can view teaching as a decision-making process. And just to make it even clearer, I would like to make a little experiment here, okay? So will you all please stand up? Okay. So now, please feel free to stretch your hands how much you like, because we are sitting for, let's say, I don't know how many minutes. Okay. And if you feel comfortable, you can sit down. Okay. That goes easy. Now, I have a difficult question for you. Why you did that? Because I said so. But what if I say so? Maybe I'm a Greek lunatic coming from a crazy place. You just met me. You believe in me. Thank you. Okay. Why did you do that? You thought that it might help you relax, okay? So you developed an expectation. But still, we haven't got into the answer. Yes? You were wondering, okay, curiosity. Thank you. Yes? Respect the position. Okay, why do you respect the position? Okay, so that's the meaning. It implies that kind of respect is a stereotype in education that is usually helpful, but on the other hand, we need to develop as teachers that kind of awareness about how we use this type of authority that the students think that we have, okay? Because we are all people, but different roles may bring different challenges. So it's all related with, who make decisions in a learning environment. And we are familiar as teachers of making most of these decisions. When we make most of these decisions, okay, then the learner or the student has minimum decisions on his side. And the opposite, on the other side of the spectrum, when the teacher makes minimum decisions, then the learner has maximum decisions. Okay, so there is a spectrum of teaching styles, like we say, where you all understand what is happening in the two extremes. So let's say here maximum of decisions are on teacher's side, and on the other side is on learner side. Let's say self-teaching, for example. It's a typical example of teaching approach that the learner makes all the decisions. If you are at home, for example, and you want to learn something, okay? But what is interesting, of course, is what is happening also in between, okay? So, and just to avoid any misunderstanding, every teaching style is useful based on the objectives and also the priorities we might have as teachers. Okay, so I will give you a couple of examples. There is, of course, some kind of similarity between the self-determination theory and the spectrum of teaching styles. If you are familiar with this theory, you understand that there is a continuum, okay? So when teacher makes all or most of the decisions, the possibilities that we will have to deal with lack of self-determination might lead to lack of motivation. So if you continuously are the ones who are making decisions, it is possible in the long term that students lose their motivation. And on the other hand, just to put it simple, if we want to give more choices and more decisions to the learner, we have more possibilities to increase their intrinsic motivation, their interest for the lesson. So there are two different clusters that reflect human capacities. Okay, I don't need to read all this. You can find it in the website. But I would like to stress your attention here because this is a study that we conducted before a couple of years. And talking about different cultures, the sample of this study was coming from Greece and Turkey, together with my good friend from Denizli, Gökçe. She's not here, I think. We conducted a study and we came up with 4 different clusters or groups of teaching styles. What this says, just to put it simple, we might think that we are so different with each other, but we have more common things to discuss. Okay? So our students need oxygen, clean air, huzur ve saglik. Okay? And of course they need kazantepi, künefe, kebab, and all the other good stuff we have. Okay? So I'll give you some teaching styles examples. I will start with the command style, which is the most typical way of teaching usually. The teacher makes all the decisions and the learner is following these decisions. It's very useful if you're going to teach synchronized swimming or if you are going to organize an event, let's say in the Olympics. If you have an activity like parachute, okay, jumping from airplanes, you cannot go to these people that they jump from airplanes and say to them, just be creative, jump however you like. Okay, people die. Okay, you cannot do this. So the command style is appropriate there. The aerobics, teaching aerobics is also a typical example of the command style because you give guidelines and everybody is following you. Now, for every teaching approach, for every teaching style, there are consequences, positive or negative. I'm just picking some of them. If you are following the command teaching style, it implies that everybody is following teacher's orders, and at the same time, we expect that everybody is doing the same activity. What can go wrong with this? Yes, you cannot increase creativity with this type of approach, that's for sure, yes. But there is another consequence that sometimes we see at school. I'm calling this the two balls phenomenon. Are you familiar with this? Have you seen that? Many times PE teachers think that it's better for students' discipline to have them in two lines and use just 2 or 3 balls and have long lines waiting. What is bad with this type of organization? They get bored. Why? Because they are not active. And we know for sure that our students need to be active. Okay, there is a necessity nowadays, of course, even more to be active. So it is important to find ways to increase their academic learning time for many reasons. And we cannot do this by not thinking differently about how we organize classes. So we need to see what kind of other ways we have in order to teach. So another stereotype here, I mean, you hear somebody says, you always have to keep control of your students, what your students are doing. Of course, this is correct. But on the other hand, if a sense of autonomy is so crucial for students' motivation, how can you do it without giving them some choices? Okay, and of course, without creating chaos. So this is just an example from the practice style of teaching. You can organize classes in stations. So having different stations with different drills in each station, you will need guidelines in, let's say, in a paper for each station. And you can give some choices to the student. Not necessarily all 9 choices that you see here, because providing too many choices on students will not increase their autonomy, it will increase confusion. So you just pick one and do that. So it is important that this is a study that we conducted many years ago. But what is important here, we had 2 different experimental conditions. One was the control group. There were 3 stations with drills. And on the other side, again, was exactly the same drills. The only difference between the experimental group and the control group was that at the experimental group, students have the chance to make a choice which station they would go first. So this is just very simple choice. And you might think what kind of difference might make on students' motivation. And we saw that it made a lot of difference in their cognitive variables, such as intrinsic motivation, for example. So the experimental group had higher scores in intrinsic interest of PE lesson, intrinsic motivation, and perceived social supportive climate. To put it simple, just because we gave them this little choice, they developed the impression that the teacher was supporting them more than compared with the control group. So I will proceed with another example. So the only one who can give proper feedback is the teacher. Of course, you are the expert. We are educating you in order to be the expert. Okay. On the other hand, during classes, do students talk with each other, or they shut their mouth? What's happening? They definitely talk with each other. Okay, and many times they provide feedback to their classmates. The only problem is that sometimes we are not ready, we are not certain if this feedback that they provide is correct, is appropriate or not. And in order to make it clearer, there is a teaching approach that we can teach actually students to provide the appropriate feedback to their mates and increase their learning. The reciprocal style of teaching is where the students work usually in pairs in very small teams where one is the observer. And the observer provides feedback based on the criteria that the teacher is preparing. Whenever you want to promote students' cooperation, this is one of the most important things you can do in education. This is just an example from the past. I mean, when I was teaching at school, and these are 10 years old students. So two of them, they are executing the exercise, and one of them is providing feedback based on the criteria that I was preparing. And then they were switching positions. And you can prepare a task card like this. You will find examples in that book that I was telling you in the internet. Now, how accurate can students be? You are the expert and maybe you have the 100%. But there are studies that have shown that students can be even 90% accurate. So it's not 100%, but even 90%, it's really, really high, almost like you. So I think 2 minutes. I don't think I have time to go with all the examples that I was preparing. So I will just go to the last part of the presentation just to conclude. And these are the last slides that I have. The last couple of years, we were doing a lot of research on how our university students are learning to teach and what kind of predispositions they carry from their experience from school. And for example, we have seen that teachers have different reasons to use a specific teaching approach, but basically rely on the use of the so-called reproductive cluster. So teaching styles that most of the decisions are being made by the teacher. That's not bad, but I mean, this is the situation all over the world. On the other hand, you need to think if you are a scholar, for example, but even if you are a teacher, when our students come to the university, they are not tabula rasa. They are not blank canvas. They already have 12 years of experience at school. They know, they have developed an idea of how PE is being taught. And those predispositions, those ideas, those experiences play a huge role on what kind of things they think and how they think themselves in the future. So, for example, students' experiences with teaching styles during school or even during sport, they were related positively with their intention to implement teaching styles as PE teachers in the future. So what all the experiences that we carry play an important role. We need to develop this kind of awareness. And as Vosniadou said before several years, knowledge is not something stable. It's something that is always reconstructed. So our students hear something from, let's say, me as a teacher, and then they go to follow another class, and maybe it's a similar subject. They hear something different, and knowledge is not accumulated. It doesn't have only an additive effect. If it is contrary, one, let's say, concept or one explanation with the other, it creates confusion, and you need always to think what's going on with that situation, for example. What is a teaching style? Should I teach this way or that way? Or, okay? So this is how we develop knowledge. This is just an example of how 10-year-old children understand how our heart is functioning. If we ask 10-year-old children how your heart is functioning, they will say it sends blood from the heart to, let's say, feet and hands. They don't know that, you know, the small and big circulation of blood, that the blood returns and cleans it. Okay, so it takes time to develop what we say in this theory, a scientific model, seeking the truth, defining the truth, discovering the truth. So our students need to develop what we call a meta-conceptual awareness, meaning that they need to understand that we can teach whatever we teach to them within those 4 years. They need to keep in mind whatever their experiences have, but at the same time, they need to continue realizing, monitoring, and evaluating their ideas. So they have progress in front of them, okay? Otherwise, we are in the risk of having a closed circle without any possibility for change or progress in any educational system. So, teşekkür ederim. Just to be accurate, çok teşekkür ederim. Okay?
Thank you very much, Nikos, Dr. Digelidis.